Hey
Hello.
there. Hi. Hi. Happy Saturday evening.
Saturday? Yes.
Hey, just because it's the weekend, can't stop, won't stop.
It's also the holiday season.
Tis the season, but we're keeping it hot.
Now, did everyone get their shopping done already? That's the question.
Nope, I'm gonna be counting on Amazon Prime up until the end. Or gift cards from there.
Gift cards are always a good last minute gift.
Yep.
Get those Walgreens gift cards because nothing else is open.
Yes, for sure.
All right, make sure you
And
vote. Make sure.
absolutely. Make sure they vote. Make sure that they are liking already, dropping a like and a comment. And if we have anyone who is joining from X, please be sure to reshare. All of that helps to make sure that we're going to bring a great show tonight. So we want to make sure that people are, as many people as possible, are able to be reached. Thank you so much.
So now, so far, the poll is saying that 77% think that the exploding mic or electrocution are plausible. Very interesting.
I appreciate the open minds. At this point, got to keep an open mind, I'd say. I mean, I think so many of us have seen that the official narrative just does not. It's not up to snuff.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and bring our guest on. Welcome, Jon. Did you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Jon Bray, John Aaron Bray on X.
And Jon has been very in depth covering the microphone theory, and he has a lot of data to back it up. He has some visuals, and it's basically been his day one theory. Did you want to tell us kind of like how you got into like what made you kind of go this route? Not super in detail, but just kind of like a high level.
Well, immediately I saw the video and I thought it was AI because it just looked so strange to me. And then my background's in body armor. I developed the refurbishing program for the Army for their IOTVs, OTVs. So I saw how his shirt deformed, and I was certain that he had body armor on. But within the end of the day, it was pretty obvious they didn't. So I started to basically run analysis on it, and that led me to the microphone.
So do you think that I know you have data, and I know you back stuff up, and you have the program that shows kind of the pressure areas and that kind of stuff. But do you think that any other theories, before we get like really deep into this, are any other theories also interesting or somewhat plausible to you, or do you think that this is the only one?
The only other thing that could really convince me is that he was shot in the chest. That's the from the physical, evidence and the energetic kind of dispersion. That's the only thing that could make any sense to me.
What about some people talking about a round coming in and hitting his necklace and bouncing up?
I just find that really unlikely. It's just the other objects that are involved in the movement. It just doesn't. They don't. The energy doesn't align to that sort of scenario.
All right, Kelly, did you want to go ahead and get us started into the meat of this?
Sure. I mean, I want to say first off that I connected with John, gosh, I don't know, at least 2+ months ago. And I so appreciated at that point, I was, no one on X. It's hard when you are trying to really, really passionate about trying to investigate the case, and you want to just talk to people who have insight, who are also equally as passionate about it. And John was willing to really hash out some things with me, and I felt the same way, that there was something that was strange about the mic. And so I've really enjoyed watching John hone his theory over the last several weeks and months. So props to you, John.
Sorry, I can't hear Kelly.
Oh man. Okay.
We can hear you, Kelly.
Okay.
I can't hear Kelly for some reason.
Okay, some people are also saying that your levels aren't balanced, so I think we'll have to turn your mic up a bit. Let me try pulling you off the stage and putting you back on. We apologize. Technical issues come with this kind of stuff.
The beauty of a live show. Can you hear me now?
I still can't hear you.
Oh man.
All right, right, give me a second here. Let me see if there's something very obvious I can fix this with quickly.
Okay.
This happened with Allie, remember?
It did. It did.
All right. And for those just coming in, today's guest is going to be talking about the exploding mic theory, and it's been his number one theory from day one, and he has a lot of stuff to back it.
And I appreciate. Okay, someone said that my mic is too loud. I can push it away from me, but I haven't changed any of the settings from where I normally have it. But they also said don't turn your mic up, it could explode.
That's funny, but not funny. All right. So you can hear me, John, but she can't
Yeah,
hear you.
yeah, you sound great.
I'm not sure if that's something we can necessarily fix.
Okay, well, maybe the amazing Mike or the amazing Mikey McCoy. It just depends on which conversation you're having.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to go ahead and get started, John, kind of with your theory, what made you lean that direction, I can try and figure out the other audio and stuff with.
Well, let's do that.
Yeah, with Kelly.
Okay. Well, the whole reason I started to do the whole vector map pixel flow was to try to pinpoint where the bullet may have hit him in his bulletproof vest, but in the middle of kind of creating the code to run that, it became obvious that he didn't have a vest on. The pictures with, you could see his nipples, and then it was just, the back line of where he's hunched over in his seat. There's no way even a executive vest could be concealed to that point. So then that left me just to run the code as I had it, and I immediately noticed that there was kind of a epicenter in the center upper sternum of his shirt. And that led me to kind of start to question the three main kind of energetic centers of the event, which is the shirt that pulled up to his face, basically almost to his cheek, the magnetic clasp that moved across his neck, and what I first thought was a lanyard wire to like an earpiece flying over his head. But it wasn't even a day into the event that someone pointed out that he didn't have an earpiece on. That became pretty obvious. And then better quality video became available, and it was pretty obvious that it was his necklace that flew up and over his head, and it wasn't, a wire. So then I was left with three different things that kind of I had to figure out how to explain how they were obviously tied together, because they started movement at the same time, and they kind of moved in kind of opposite directions of each other. The shirt, pulling up on his face, and the magnetic clasp kind of moved opposite of each other at first, and then the magnetic clasp flows back across his chest as the shirt relaxes. And then the necklace was what puzzled me the most, because it's the most energetic object of the event. It moved the quickest. It had the most amount of energy kind of displaced in it, and it was enough energy to actually break the necklace. So then I refined the code to really hone in on those details. And my first runs, the red dots are mapping the epicenter frame to frame. So every frame there's pixel movement, and wherever there was the most pixel movement in the frame, it maps it with a red dot. When there's a lot of movement going on, it can be random. But when you have a lot of quick movement, it's pretty accurate, especially when you have multiple angles. So between the two front angles that we had, I was able to basically pinpoint the epicenters around his sternum. And then I noticed that the magnetic clasp kind of followed that. So that led me to kind of investigate what the magnetic clasp was all about. And then I found the model of the microphone, and then the pictures of them kind of mounting it on it. So then I started studying in the past, how did he wear the microphone? And when he first got the mic, he wore it on the outside of his shirt, and then it slowly kind of evolved, and then they put it underneath his shirt. And that day, it's kind of like mounted in a peculiar way that it's almost like standing on its side, where it's kind of bulges his shirt out. It looks kind of uncomfortable, and it's at a 45-degree angle. And I kept getting peak maps right below that, like kind of 45 degrees, like a trajectory that matches what you would expect if the bottom of that microphone kind of blew out. So then I found a video of someone actually disassembling the mic, and then I saw where the battery was, and the battery was right in that area. So that led me to start investigate, like, what could this battery been modified somehow? And then it wasn't even a year ago before that event that the Grim pager or Grim beeper attacks, the Mossad pager attacks happened, and I studied those, and I realized that those pagers were in circulation for over a decade before they were detonated, and the batteries went through airport scanners. They were completely functional that whole time,
That's the
and
key. Completely
that
functional.
yeah, that really opened my mind to the fact that Charlie's microphone was the older models. He had those microphones for quite a while, and he's traveled all over for 'em. So there's ample opportunity for someone to get a hold of it, and you can see how quickly you can get the battery out of it. You don't need to solder anything. You can just pop it out and basically replace it with a loaded battery, and the user would never know. You could go on using it. It would have approximately 75% of the charge capacity, and you, it would take someone that would used it all the way to empty all the time to even notice that it changed. So that made it plausible. And then I started to study the injuries from the pager attacks, which the pagers themselves were alkaline batteries. They were round, like AA style batteries. So they left like black residue, but they didn't leave any burns, and they didn't really like char the victims, and it was pretty directional. The
Wait, so you're saying the ones in Lebanon did not leave charring?
Yeah, what they left was the alkaline battery was like the insides of the alkaline battery, like the black residue from the alkaline battery. The walkie-talkies that followed the day after, they had lithium batteries, and they didn't leave any charring or any residue. They were pretty much clean.
Interesting.
So that's where I was like, well, that's bizarre, because immediately, like everyone else, you think explosion, you think it's going to be like a lot of radial damage. There'll be charring and residue left. So that opened up to the possibility that it could be a completely clean burn. But then I was kind of perplexed, like, why would someone go through the effort of this and not have a means to cover it up, right? If they killed Charlie with a loaded microphone bomb, everyone would know who it is. So that kind of opened up the idea that they would need a patsy, and then the rifle kind of made sense to me, like the weirdness and strangeness about it. But I'll put my mind in kind of the conspirators, right? If I wanted to pull this sort of event out, I would want the wound and the event to look like a rifle shot. And in my mind, immediately what I thought was it looked like a chest shot. So then I was like, what if this was designed to mimic a chest shot of a 36, 30
So,
6?
so let's talk about that really quick, because a lot of people are going to say, like, what's your official explanation as to why the official narrative wouldn't work?
Well, it's because it's the order of events. So you when you watch the events unfold in slow motion, frame by frame, the necklace, the microphone movement, and the shirt all precede the appearance of the neck wound. And with a high velocity impact to the neck, the zone 2 of the neck in particular, you would have instantaneous effects, right? You would have automized blood, you would have cavitation. There's no way that you would have it's at 0.43 seconds delay from when the shirt first moves to when you see the neck wound even appear. And it's almost a whole second before blood appears out of the neck wound.
Yeah, that's the
So
strangest part to me, is that delay.
so then I studied the forensics of high velocity impacts, and there's so much, case studies on it, and examples of people being shot in the neck in the exact same area, and nothing about it made sense. There's no high velocity blood, no blood automation. And then the strangeness of the leaked autopsy reports, like them trying to say that the C1 was hit when the trajectory was almost impossible for that to happen, and then like it traveled down to the C6, and then I just couldn't understand why they would go through efforts to try to explain that. But when I got to kind of the aftermath, right? So once I thought I had a solid grasp on what caused the shirt to move, what caused the necklace to move, what caused his body to react in the way it did, the way his hands grasp together, his elbows lift up and his arms come in, and particularly his legs. If you look at his legs, his knees immediately come together and he lifts himself out of the chair. And so that's indicating that he had mid-brain and brainstem damage. And then that made perfect sense to me. That's why they had to lean on the C1 damage, because that's the only way that you could have that sort of physical reaction from a ballistic impact. Outside of a headshot, it would have to be at the very base of the spine for a bullet to cause a physical reaction like that. So, it made me think that possibly the narrative was being crafted kind of on the fly. And so then I started questioning the neck wound, like the bleeding of the neck wound, the delayed bleeding of it, and the shape of it. And particularly the trajectory of the magnetic clasp, which basically tells you the trajectory of the whole microphone, right? They were connected together, and how they lined up perfectly with where the wound appeared. And then the wound had this strange, rectangular appearance and the delayed bleeding. And if you look very closely, frame by frame, you can actually see the deformation of the flesh. It matches the trajectory of the microphone, the direction it was traveling. So,
a quick question that people are going to have is, are you saying that the microphone itself exploded, or are you saying that something exploded out of the microphone towards his neck, or both?
I believe that the microphone was designed to replicate a 30-06 impact to the chest, and there was unforeseen shrapnel that came off of the microphone, either the battery or the magnetic clasp, that struck his neck, that they didn't prepare for. And so when the very obvious neck wound became kind of the center point of the event, they had to shift the narrative from a chest shot to a single neck shot. And they had to explain the physical reactions that we all saw by, the C1 impact and the vertebrae damage. When in reality, I believe he probably had chest damage too. And if you remember, there was leaks from the hospital that described massive chest damage. They said his chest was caved in. And even some of the first reports of the autopsy, which the New York Times article even mentioned chest, but then it was redacted and it was changed later. And you can't find any mention of that again. But the whole, even the first witness that I saw from the crowd said that he was shot in the chest and blood came out from underneath his shirt. Yeah. So, it's, I feel like that there was a scramble to cover up any chest wound because they only had a single rifle shot, and you can't have two different wounds with a single rifle shot. And I think that explains the strangeness at the hospital with the physicians and the surgeon not be able to go back in, and then autopsies ordered overnight, and then flying him out, and then the security footage from the hospital getting confiscated. It all just seemed kind of out of the ordinary and unnecessary, unless you had something to hide, like a very obvious chest wound, right?
So just real quick, sorry to cut you off there. Some people are saying that he sounds nervous. Yeah, this is not what he does. He does not do podcasts. He does not do interviews regularly. So we're going to be giving him some grace because he is not doing this on a regular basis. So
and I would say that for anyone to hop on a live stream and completely, flush out their entire very complicated theory of, amongst all these people online is a nerve-wracking thing. So John, I think you're knocking it out of the park. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
John, can you hear
Are you
Kelly?
able to hear me?
I can't, unfortunately.
Oh man. Okay.
Well, all right. Well, I guess we'll just keep rolling with it the way it is. All right. So now some people are asking to have you explain this. So, and actually you said that you either wrote software or you use software for this. So who I guess you want to walk people about like through the software piece of it, like how you came up with this kind of grid that shows where the pressure and the power and energy was.
Yeah, so I took the MT Labs, the MIT Labs optical flow software, and I modified it to specifically look for epicenters frame to frame. So what it's doing is looking frame to frame to video and looking on how the pixels move. It's because his shirt has those freedom texts across it, and his shirt's white, and then we have the black magnetic clasp on the shirt. It gives us a lot of vectors to track. So basically, the software is looking at every frame and it's mapping the movement in between those frames, and then it's putting a red circle on the epicenter of those movements. And you can see the color mapping is showing you where the areas of the highest movement. So it kind of shows you the previous frame where the movement moved from the previous frame to the next
like an
frame.
onion skin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so like in this one, is the red circle where the focus is, or is that just
the red circle is where the peak movement happened from the previous frame to that frame?
Okay,
And
so
you
that's
can
showing
see
movement across.
and you see the heat frame from where the text was. It's showing you the text was in the previous frame. It was there, and then you can see where the text on his shirt is now, where the shirt pulls up across his face.
Yep.
Okay, so quick question on this. So this is a separate theory that I'll probably ask you about, but the electrocution theory, he was saying that, he was trying to explain like the burn under his like chest nipple area. But in your stuff you're showing here, it's not that low, correct? It's higher up on his chest.
Yeah, and the other angle maps it slightly different. Because the pixels are going to be different from different angles. But they're both in that general area.
Okay, so they're both kind of by the F of freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Hey Matt, would you mind asking? I see someone said optical.
the shape charge theory basically is that it's not like a general basic explosive. It's not a radial force. It has a small charge and a cone, and it basically directs a high energy jet out of the cone. So it's made to penetrate armor, but you can use it on soft targets too, and it allows you to create a wound that's very similar to a rifle wound, where it leaves a deep wound channel, and it'll even leave copper fragmentation into the wound. So what we're seeing in the shirt moving is the overpressurization. So the pressure that didn't penetrate the flesh basically is escaping through the shirt, and that's what causes the shirt to balloon up and move so much. That the shirt that pulls up across his face on the opposite side of the microphone is actually from his necklace. The pendant on his necklace, the cross pendant, is pushed down, and then it can't go down anymore. So then it follows the kind of the path of the necklace and raises up across, and that's what lifts his shirt up across his face.
Okay, so you're saying the downward pressure of the explosion puts pressure down on the pendant, that stretches the necklace, that force builds up, and then it pops back up, and that's why you see it kind of goes vertically, like straight up in the air.
Yeah, if you can actually see one frame where the cross is peeking out next to his face, but it gets caught and the necklace breaks. So then the necklace slides out of the cross pendant, and the cross pendant falls back down. And that's why his shirt falls back down so quickly. And then immediately after that, you'll see the appearance of the wound on his neck.
Okay, interesting. So now let's talk about this really quick. Let's talk about the, actually, let me pull that other one off here really quick and put that on. Okay, so for this.
So you see that part, the magnetic clasp goes on the backside. So that part that we're seeing right now, that he has a suction cup, is against Charlie's chest. And that's the batteries against his chest also. So if the shape charge was put anywhere, it's going to be put in that gold battery right there.
No, I think with the previous pager attacks and the cell phones, they just replaced a portion of the battery, correct?
Right. They basically took 20% of the cell and replaced it with the explosive.
Okay.
And I believe that's what they probably did with this. They just replaced it with a smaller cell battery, a slightly shorter battery, and then they put the shape charge in the end of the space that was left over.
And that would make it so it would still function. He could still live stream and everything with it, but obviously the battery wouldn't last as long.
Exactly.
Okay, now someone is asking you to explain how the pendant broke one more time, just so they can understand it.
Basically, the pendant, the necklace was moved by the force of the explosion, and then it crossed the path of the shape charge. So when the pendant was pushed down and it met the end of the slack of the necklace, and then it's like a pendulum. It swung up and started to come out of the shirt, and that pulled the necklace across, and it ended up crossing that peak that we see in the middle of his chest, and that's what snapped the necklace. And then the momentum of the necklace forced it over his head. So that's why when we see the necklace fly up and over his head, it's broken. It's a single strand, 26 inches of necklace instead of being, a loop connected.
Okay, now we've had a few people asking, one, can you share the modified program that you wrote? And then someone else is asking, I should put it on the screen here. Is this a Python C++ package, a fork? Like, can we get a more technical explanation for devs?
It's just Python code, and it's shared on my X. You can copy the code and run it yourself. I ran it in Claude 200.
All right, so let me share. So that's his X right there, Jon Bray. It's Jon Aaron Bray.
And we don't know at this point what the coroner's report said. I've seen some people asking about that, and I've tried to kind of interject a little bit too. I mean, that's part of the problem, you guys, is that we don't know exactly, what the coroner had to say, what the autopsy said, what the doctors, officially said. I mean, we're going off of third, fourth, fifth party information.
And if you're also taking into consideration things like now Candace is saying that, Colvett never said what he said, or that what he said was made up, and that the surgeon never said that. We're kind of getting to the point where can we believe anything that's been told so far? Anything. Yeah. So like the fact that he had broken vertebrae, and like, is that true? We don't even know if, because if people are trying to make these other narratives fit that now. Like, well, if he was electrocuted, how do you account for the vertebrae? Do we even know the vertebrae are broken?
And so why the speculation? Because I think inquiring minds want to know. And there are a lot of us who just cannot stand to sit around and wait for, a year plus. And it just doesn't feel right. That's, at least I'll speak for myself in saying that I can't just sit around and twiddle my thumbs and wait. I've got to keep digging.
Yep. And we will just real quick, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Head over and check out Kelly Raybon. She's now on YouTube, and I think she's actually monetized now thanks to you guys. You guys went over there and helped her out. And always check her out on X and Instagram as well.
Thank you.
Like I said, Jon, I'll put his on the screen again. It's Jon Bray on X, Jon Aaron Bray. All right, Jon, we can go ahead and continue forward. So we talked about the necklace stretching down and coming back up. So the next movement, I guess. So say it explodes, it sends the magnet in the mic start to go the direction of the, I guess the shape charge would knock it that way.
So a shape charge has to have a standoff. It has to create a jet before it can penetrate. It's not penetrating with brute force. It's actually, creating a high speed jet that's basically turning anything it contacts into liquid. So it needs a 2 centimeter standoff. So they would have to design a primer charge that kind of forces the microphone away from his flesh before the shape charge goes off. And if you look at the particularly Cubs video, the highest resolution video, that's kind of to Charlie's right or left hand side, you can see that the microphone lifts up and kind of almost touches his face before it starts to make the trajectory across his body. And it's my belief that that's the primer charge creating the standoff space, and that primer charge is what causes the necklace to move. And then once the primary charge, the shape charge, goes off, it actually snaps the necklace, and that's when you see it break loose and fly over his head. And that's when the trajectory of the microphones change from just kind of lifting up to his face to going across his body. And at that same time, we have the shirt coming down. So while we have the microphone going, the magnet clasp and the microphone going across his chest, we have the shirt falling down, and then they kind of like at a certain point cross each other, and you kind of lose sight of the magnetic clasp. And then that's when the wound on his neck appears. So if you look at it frame to frame, there's no single frame where you can see both at the same time. You see the magnetic clasp and then you don't see it, and then you see a wound on his neck. And I'm
What
not
kind of
100% certain that it is the magnetic clasp. It could be the magnetic clasp or the battery. They're very similar shape. As you saw in the video before, they're both rectangular. But I am sure the trajectory of the microphone and the trajectory matches perfectly with the appearance of the wound. And the microphone kind of snaps back. And you can just see kind of a bulge where it is, but you don't necessarily ever see the full magnetic clasp again. So it's the timing and the trajectory is what led me to believe that it was a blunt rectangular object from the microphone that causes the neck wound, combined with the actual physical, traits of the wound itself. It's not a high velocity wound. That was a medium velocity wound. And you know that because of the delayed bleeding and then also the deformation of the skin. It was just the skin was flexed outwards. It wasn't like a cavitation from a high energy impact. And then the bleeding was so strange and delayed. And we can't show it here, but I actually have code that has mapped the fluid dynamics of the blood, and I've been able to actually track the rectangular object falling out of his neck from 2 different angles. So
Okay,
not only do we have the trajectory matching the portion where the wound appears, but I also have a rectangular object, flat black object falling out of the wound from 2 different angles also.
Okay, so just to go over that again in a summary. So you're saying from the explosion, are you saying like a piece of plastic went into his neck and that popped back out when he bled?
Either the magnetic clasp or the battery. It was something dense and rectangular.
Okay, so you don't think it was like shrapnel from the mic exploding?
That's what I mean. It's shrapnel from it, but the shrapnel was the dense object being the magnetic clasp or the battery itself.
unintentional?
Okay, so so in the explosion, I'm trying to remember I think it was Cameron Vance. Have you seen that video where he did some testing with a exploding mic?
No, I haven't.
So he's holding like a stick and he has some kind of explosive. I don't think it's like PT, what is that called? PET or whatever, but
Yeah.
But he has some other kind of explosive in there and he has the mic and he puts it under the shirt and he explodes it. And every time he explodes it, the magnet flies straight away from the body. And a lot of people are asking like how can the mic and the mic magnet go towards like anywhere? Shouldn't it just explode away from the body?
It's because it's a shaped charge. Imagine it's like a jet. So it's not explosive where it's a radial explosive where it's exploding in all directions. This is an explosion that has a directed path. And
So
the
in this case,
only expansion comes out of that directed path, the cone. So it's like, like a rocket engine. When you launch a rocket engine, it just doesn't explode everywhere. It
Yeah,
sends
makes
a
sense.
directed path in one direction, and that causes a trajectory, and it follows that trajectory quickly.
So that would mean in this case, equal and opposite reaction. That would mean that the shape charge would have had to have been pointed down and away from him, correct? To push everything up towards him.
Right. And so the variable comes in is the primer charge, where they have to create the standoff space. So combined with the odd angle that the microphone was kind of mounted on him, it wasn't mounted flat against his body. It was kind of like stood on its side. And then the standoff charge, which it's my belief that they anticipated the mic to be flat on his body, and the standoff charge was made to raise the microphone directly away from his body before the primary shape charge went off. But because the microphone was kind of mounted on its side, when the standoff charge went off, it lifted it up. So then it changed the trajectory. When the shape charge went off, it basically created like a rocket engine that caused it to travel across his chest instead of it directing the charge directly into his chest. And a shape charge is 90% efficient, more than 90% efficient of directing the energy to one direction. So the whole equal and opposite, it doesn't really apply because we're sending less than a gram of metal cone in a high speed jet into the flesh. So it's not like a bullet or a traditional ballistic where you're sending a heavy object in the opposite direction.
Okay, so next question in simple terms. How would this microphone explode with enough force to kill someone? So do you think that this has enough charge to cause all the reaction that we saw in that small of a package?
It's because it's concentrating. It's like a water jet where you're basically taking all that energy in that charge, and you're directing it to a very small stream. And because it's you're creating an acceleration, because you're forcing this expansive force down a very small cone. It reaches Mach 7. So anything it contacts, it basically turns it to liquid. And so it's deep penetrating. That's why they use it for, to defeat tank armor and things like that. But with soft tissue, it's even more devastating because there's not as much resistance. So it would create a deep channel just like a 30-06 impact, but it would do it with a minimum amount of charge, less than 2 grams.
All right, so I am pulling up. This is just for reference for people. Let me see if I can share this here really quick. So this right here. Let me get this picture up. Give me 1 second. That's interesting how it makes you pull the previous one down first. All right. So this is one of the pagers from Lebanon.
Yeah,
and
that in particular is the walkie-talkie.
Walkie-talkie. Okay. So now I'm just bringing this up because with the Candace Owens kind of dropped that bomb in one of her videos saying that there's a little specks, the little black specks on the floor inside of her car. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah.
So the car that Charlie was in, and they're saying that might be from, people are implying that might be from the explosion, like pieces of the pager or of the, in this case, of the audio that exploded, and these little tiny pieces they're seeing in the car were from that. What do you think about that?
I believe
Yeah, I'm actually the one that sent her the message about that. The type of plastic that you see in the floorboard too would match the plastic you could expect from that device. So you have flat black plastic, and then you have glossy plastic. The glossy plastic is the actual face of the case, which the battery is right behind that O there. So that immediate charge would basically shatter that into, a million little pieces like glass. And then the primary charge would further break the inner core of the device, which you showed earlier when the battery was kind of popped out of the device. It's all flat black on the inside of it. And how thin that plastic is, when it would break, it would just shatter into small little pieces like that from the high pressure wave of the explosive. Like I said, it's a Mach 7, jet that's going to be coming out of that device. It's just going to completely wreck anything. And it's not a hot explosion. It can reach 500 degrees, but it does so in such a quick time that it doesn't really get time to transfer away. That's why it doesn't like burn things or leave burns even on the victim. It would leave a wound that looked a lot like a rifle impact.
So it's a quick release of energy, not a hot explosion.
Yeah, the quickness of it is the real key factor. It's a extremely quick burning and clean burning explosive. And that kind of explains the high energy that we see, how fast it dissipates, from the shirt. It causes a huge reaction, but then it goes away really fast.
And just real quick, just to get this out of the way, do you think that there's any chance Charlie's still alive?
If he's still alive, he's the greatest actor that's ever lived. I mean, he nailed the physical reaction of a midbrain and brainstem damage, and the way he hit the ground. I have videos of him hitting the ground slow motion. It was devastating. I mean, his head bounced off the ground. He was absolutely limp.
And then
I'm a firm believer that his heart was almost stopped before he hit the ground.
Well, and I know that Charles McClintock says he has an image where his neck is destroyed based on the way his head's hanging. So I know a lot of people want hope that he's still alive, but I'm not sure if anyone can guarantee that. All right, so let's go ahead. I just want to check questions here really quick. We have a lot of questions. I think we can probably mix some in if you're okay with that as we go through your theory.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, let's see. Flip It Girl Guri. Thanks for becoming a channel member. Let's see. Okay. So people asking, could the necklace have had something in it? Like PET in or something in the necklace itself?
Yeah, I've actually thought about that. The cross, the pendant itself possibly having, but the seeing it peek out of the shirt still kind of intact made me kind of leave that. And then it needs an energetic means to, it would be a lot more difficult to place an explosive independent of a cross and have a means to trigger it than it would be in the microphone. The microphone is just the most convenient thing to target with explosives because you have all the electronics, you have the battery, it's going to be on his chest, literally against his chest. It's just really, really convenient. And he doesn't have it most of the time. If his cross he's wearing, all the time, it would just be a lot more difficult to get access to the cross to plant an explosive in it.
All right, then we have a question. How's the mic clip at his sternum? And I think they're asking that because of the imaging that shows the red circle in the middle and stuff. Did you want to explain why the way it goes across?
Well, it starts, under his collarbone, and then the first movement happens is it kind of raises up and almost touches his chin, and then it crosses his body. So you can see there, it's in the kind of like the mid travel there. It's going across his median of his body. But from the side view, you can see where actually there's a 60 frame per second video from the side that would be from his right side that you can see it lift up and touch his face before it takes the path across his body. And that would be from what I think is the primary or the primer charge to give the standoff space necessary for the shape charge to penetrate deeply into his flesh.
And just real quick, anyone coming in, we are talking about the mic theory, but this is probably the most in-depth version of it you're ever going to hear. And Jon is also the one who contacted Candace about the little pieces that were in the vehicle that Charlie was in, saying that it looked like it was maybe shrapnel from the exploding mic. And also hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and check out Jon and Kelly. I have all their stuff linked down in the description. And really quick, Kelly, you might, if you try joining with your phone, you might be able to talk and have the conversation.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what else to do since you guys can't hear each other. It's kind of strange, but
Okay. Do you think it would be best for me to completely drop out of the stream first, or try to add in from my phone? What are
maybe mute yourself and then add on from your phone.
Okay.
All right, and then Jon, more questions here. We have a ton of questions. Let's see. Now this is a very common one. People are asking, well, if an explosion went off under a shirt, how come it didn't tear or mark his shirt? Why is there no explosion marks? Why is there no tears that are obvious? If there was enough force to kill him, then why wouldn't it have left some kind of marking or tearing?
And that's a very valid question, and it comes down to the use of the shape charge. They're made to be very efficient in directing that energy in one direction. So it's like having, like I said before, a rocket engine where you have a lot of propellant, you have a lot of energy, but there's only one path for it to escape. And that path is through a very directed metal cone. And as that explosion expands, it's slowly releasing out of that metal cone and creating a really high speed jet that penetrates into the flesh. So it's not like a ballistic, launch of a bullet where you have, the force of the bullet, causing the equal and opposite force, or like a traditional explosion where you have a radial force expanding everywhere. It's a very controlled explosion.
All right, now let me ask you this, because of the new images that are coming out supposedly, and Baron saying that he saw a burn under his nipple on the right side, kind of down by his rib. Could that be explained from the jet from the shape charge burning that area as it was going off?
I would say it's probably more from the primer charge, where they had to have a primary kind of like a priming explosive to create the space they needed between the device and his flesh for the shape charge to do its work. The shape charge is just going to leave a very small, round, very clean hole. Like the Israeli attacks with the Mossad attacks with the pager, they were designed to send shrapnel to their face or someone holding the device in their hands. So there's not a direct analog, even though they used the same type of explosive hidden in a battery. they weren't designed to explode right on the person's body or like a shape charge, which would be a few centimeters away from the body. They were designed for someone to push a button looking at the pager and send shrapnel at their face, basically. So that's why we see the differences of, from a traditional explosive. It's not something that we're accustomed to seeing. You can look at examples of, armor penetrating shape charges and kind of see how cleanly they make the holes and how they don't even have to put a backing on it. They just set it on the metal, right? And it makes a big giant hole. And
a lot of people don't realize too that it's used on a much larger scale. They use it in war.
Yeah,
I mean, they use shape charges to blow through tanks and stuff like that. So the technology is just miniaturized for this use case.
Yeah. And it's very quiet too. It sounds like a firework. So, that's the other thing about the rifle. It's like you wouldn't need a lot of sound to kind of muffle it and make it where people wouldn't notice that there was an explosion, right on his person. It just, any sort of distraction would make it easy for people to overlook it.
So what are your thoughts on the sound itself? So a lot of audio engineers and audio forensics people are saying that there was a crack thump that was consistent with a high power rifle and all those things. So what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely think that there was a 30-06 shot that day. I think there was a supersonic crack. All that definitely happened, but I think it was more of a ruse to provide cover for the explosion and also to tie the assassination to the patsy. The area that it happened in is so tricky because there's a corridor, there's concrete walls on both sides, like large flat concrete walls, and then we're dealing with audio from cell phones, which are, they clip. There's a lot of challenges, and the biggest thing I have a problem with is that the rifle sound came through the PA system. If you look at the videos, all the videos that the cameras can see the PA speakers, the rifle sound is so much louder than the videos where the cameras aren't in direct sight of the speakers.
Okay, wait, say that again.
The rifle sound was played through the PA speakers. So the speakers that were playing Charlie's voice and the person that he was taking questions from, the rifle sound was without a doubt played through those speakers. Now, whether that's Charlie's microphone picked it up or some other means, but you can't deny that the videos that are close to the speakers, their rifle sound is much louder than the videos of where the camera's not in direct sight of the speakers.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to dig it further into that for sure. All right, let's see. Some people are asking about what about obviously the electrocution theory and or a taser. Would that explain what you're seeing with the body reaction?
With one hand, but the hand that's not holding, like that picture I showed you where his fingers are almost like crossed and his knees coming together. If you've ever been electrocuted, it affects where the electricity's flowing. So his hand that's holding the microphone, which I'm using the exact same mic that Charlie used that day, by the way.
As in 58. Yeah.
Yes, sir. It would definitely grasp. He would grasp and hold that microphone from that electricity, but that current would be traveling through his arm, through the chair, down to the ground. And that's the other problem, is that he's sitting on a chair that has a plastic seat, and he's sitting on like a memory foam cushion, and then he's on a platform that has a composite top and an aluminum frame. So like the path of conductivity is not very good either. Can it happen? Absolutely. I was shocked. When I first heard it, I was very dismissive, but when I researched, people get shocked by these microphones all the time. Because there's three prongs. One prong's a grounding prong. And if it's hooked to a PA system that's not grounded properly, anything that's amplified on that PA system can send that voltage through you. And it takes a lot less voltage to kill you than I ever imagined. So it absolutely is possible. It absolutely could happen. But I don't think his physical reactions necessarily match that. And then there's too many other unexplained things, like what caused the necklace to fly off his head, what caused the shirt to balloon around, what caused the neck wound. It would be like an unnecessary addition to an already complicated assassination attempt. If it was done nefariously, and then he's holding the microphone on and off, like what would trigger it all of a sudden to start electrocuting them. Usually there's something that causes it, like someone hugs someone that's wet, or they drop it in water, or they pick it up for the first time. Like there has to be a variable that changes for it to all of a sudden start to electrocute you.
I think some people are saying like nefarious reasons, right? Like someone flipped the switch that took away the ground, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of what I think that theory is based on.
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
it's absolutely doable. It wouldn't take a lot, but it doesn't explain everything we saw.
Okay, now question. So, let's see. So with electrocution, yeah, I agree. So that he's on some kind of either carpet or industrial rubber or like tough coat, and those are all designed to be non-conductive.
Yeah.
But so if you get a chance after this, go check out my video on electrocution, the one where it's the blue thumbnail. But I spent like 50 minutes talking about all the different ways he could have been electrocuted besides the microphone itself.
Yeah.
But one thing that I want to point out too is you were talking about the way his both hands came up, but it was only in his left hand. And typically, if you're electrocuted, that hand would grip on, the other one would still be free to move, and he'd probably be trying to rip it out of his hand and stuff like that. The other thing is, and this was pointed out by Elgeist, but he had his hands down in his lap with both hands on it when it started, right?
Yeah.
So he would have probably stayed in that position and gotten shocked in both hands and been locked in that position, right?
Absolutely.
So the fact that he let go with one hand and had it in his other hand and was moving and stuff freely, kind of, I don't want to say it like completely debunks it, but it doesn't look good for that theory.
Yeah, it doesn't look like electrocution to me.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Okay. We kind of covered this a little bit, but they said, please ask whether he believes the videos are faked or not, both of Charlie and the shooter on the roof. So the Tyler Robinson angle as well.
I would say that from analyzing all the videos, there's definitely been a few videos that I'm very suspect of. The metadata doesn't match. They were made like 10, 12 days after the event, and then they're just so highly compressed. And it's so easy to modify videos nowadays. So what I look for is consistency between angles. I know the first few angles that came out, they came out so fast after an event that there's very little time for anyone to fake them, and they all happen to be very consistent from frame to frame. You don't see anything unique frame to frame in those videos than you see in any of the other originals. So whenever I see a video that has even a unique frame, I'm always very suspect of it.
Another thing too that Jason Goodman pointed out, I know people have a lot of different feelings about his theory and that kind of stuff, but one thing he was pointing out early on was that there was like 15, I think was it 15 or 10 frame per second videos that were released, which that is not normal frame rate for any device I've ever seen in my entire life. So obviously it's been manipulated in some kind of way.
Yeah. And if you've ever done any work with like, AI engine, like it wants to do less frames. It'll do whatever it can to cheat. It'll double frames. It'll do, it's very lazy in its processing. And to do 30 frames a second is a lot of work. So if it can cheat a little bit and, do 10 frames, then it will.
No, can you hear me now?
Can you hear Kelly now?
No, unfortunately.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. StreamYard, you are officially fired.
Right.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. We wanted Kelly to be able to interact completely too, but it's for some reason it's not working. Let's see this one here. Would that have been cause of the problems they were having with the sound that day? So basically, would that shape charge or anything having to do with it, or the setup of it, or the trigger that would, like they were saying that maybe Brian Harpole was reaching in his pocket and like messing with something that may have been like the remote trigger or something? Would that have caused the issues with the feedback and stuff that was happening that day?
No, I think it's just kind of like what we're dealing with. It's just audio gremlins. It was
technical
the beginning
issues.
It was the beginning of the day. You can see them adjusting the volume of the PA system before that. Like they were just still working everything out.
All right, next. What about the sound of an explosion?
The sound would be very quiet and very directed. So only the people that were really close to Charlie would even be able to really perceive it. It would be no louder than an M80 firecracker. And I think that's where the key of the rifle shot kind of comes into play too. It put in my mind as, the would-be assassin planning this, the rifle shot not only provides a tie to the patsy so you can have your fall guy, but it also provides perfect cover for the explosion.
All right, now before we go on with these other questions, is there anything specific about your side of the theory that you wanted to cover? I know I think we've covered your theory overall. Go ahead, Kelly.
Can you ask, and sorry, we're having to play the telephone game, okay? But can you ask Jon if he's comfortable? At one point, we had talked a little bit about the timing of the plant explosion that had happened in Tennessee. Can you ask him if he's comfortable talking about that, or if he's thought any more about that?
Okay, Kelly's asking about the plant explosion in Tennessee and if you're comfortable talking more about that or not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this was just another one of those things that was just there's a certain amount of coincidences you can overlook, but when things start to get like highly weird, it becomes hard to ignore. So the AES plant in Tennessee, their defense contractor, they were actually contracted to make these micro shaped charges. They process the same explosive that I propose is in this device. They actually make the very device that I propose assassinated Charlie 30 days after the the event at UVU. The manufacturing plant that makes those micro shaped charges explodes into a million pieces.
Wait a second. So say that again.
This
The
is
manufacturing plant that has a government contract to create these very devices that I theorize killed Charlie
yeah,
exploded 30 days after the UVU event.
almost like a cover up.
Exactly.
Yes.
So,
And every person,
so I looked into the employees. I saw the victim list. 16 employees died that day. God bless them. But in the news report, it said the production manager was brand new to the job. So it made me curious about what happened to the old production manager. When did he leave? And so, I don't want to say the guy box the guy or anything, but he literally left days after the event at the UVU, and he doesn't have a new job. I wasn't able to contact him with any numbers I could find. Like it's very, very odd. Like he just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. So it's like you get the vibes that something wasn't quite right there. It's suspicious timing, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, all of that combined, that's I mean, if that's definitely a good lead to chase, but that's way too coincidental, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Let's keep going on with the questions here. We talked about that. Okay, so a lot of people are re-asking this question. So I know a lot of people, like we're up to like 1,400 people. To anyone that's coming in, we explored the exploding mic theory, and he gets into it pretty in-depth. And he has way more in-depth stuff on X as well. So make sure you check him out. It's Jon Bray. I'll put that up here one more time. Right there. Jon Bray on X. But basically he's saying that the mic exploded on his chest with a shape charge. That shape charge made it move towards his neck, and something, shrapnel or something from it, or the mic magnet itself, hit his neck. And he wrote a program or modified a program that showed that something square shaped or, I guess like some kind of polygon came out with the blood as though something went into his neck and then the blood pushed it back out. And that's kind of where he's at. And he thinks that the shot itself did happen, but it was not what necessarily hit him or killed him, correct?
That's correct.
Yep. And then we were talking about some other things that are very coincidental, like this Tennessee plant exploding that happened to make the same type of shape charges that he thinks might have been used in this this assassination. So,
which is quite specific. I mean, very specific.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how common those are. I don't know how many companies make those, but I've never heard of a company that makes them, so I'm sure it's probably not a common thing. All right, let's go on to the next question here. Okay, actually, I have a question. So you mentioned that these shape charges often sound like fireworks. A lot of people said they heard a firework that day. That's kind of the common theme. Do you think that's related or just coincidence?
I think that from my research, the sound that you hear from it is very directional, and I believe that certain people would be in the correct position to hear it before they heard the rifle sound or hear it louder than the rifle sound. But I would say, but as a person that's been shot at, the rifle will sound like a firework, like not a 30-06, but a handgun or even the 5.56 sounds a lot like a firework.
Yeah.
The sonic crack doesn't. That's a very unique sound, but the actual sound from the rifle itself sounds a lot like a firework. So, and like I said, the environment, the audio environment there was so strange. So many geometric shapes, so many concrete walls. It's hard to make any sense of audio from that event.
Well, and then I mean, I know this can happen, but you can get waves that cancel each other out too. So you could have some problems with phasing and that kind of stuff that can give you incorrect results.
Yep.
I'm not saying this happened a lot, but it can happen.
Yeah.
All right. We have a super chat here. Thanks, Cinnamon Town Productions, for the super chat. So she's saying, what about Charlie's ring? Why did it drop to his little finger and then fall off? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, it's a hinged ring. You can see him in other videos. He flips it. It's like a nervous tick he has. He'll flip it from one finger to another. And I actually have a video of it where I track it, where you can see it where it flips and partially goes onto his pinky finger, and as he falls over, it falls off. And I track it all the way to the ground. It bounces off the ground and falls to his side.
And these rings are also common for people that have like high blood pressure and heart problems and, you know, diabetes and stuff like that, because their fingers will swell. So they make these hinge rings, so it's really easy for them to take them off. All right, let's see. This one's interesting. Is there a technology that can send a directed pulse of force energy into a body that travels until the pulse of energy exits the body, like through a specific frequency or some other means? So in other, just like directed energy weapons and overall, like what are your thoughts on those?
Oh yeah, I'm sure of it. I mean, they can put voices in your head. So, with just waves. So we're just bags of liquid. So we react to waves. But I think it would be highly unlikely that they would use something like that in this event. They would use something more conventional.
Makes sense. Let's see. Thanks. It's Sunshine Girl. Thanks for the super chat. Someone's asking, do we know what the fabric Charlie's Freedom shirt was made of? I'm pretty sure it's just a cotton T-shirt, right? Did you see?
Yeah, jersey knit cotton.
Jersey knit cotton. Okay.
Yeah, and it has a pretty high tensile strength. I ran tensile strength test on it, and it can take about 35 pounds of force in 2 square inches for it to rip. So the biggest thing about it is that it has a lot of slack. So and then stretch. So
A lot of give.
it can
Yeah.
it can take a lot of pressure before it even starts to reach its tensile strength.
But it is also worth adding that, if you believe the Brian Harpole's story that he shared in the Sean Ryan interview, that when he got to the hospital, for whatever reason, he felt the need to rip the shirt off of Charlie, and then they could use the defibrillator on Charlie. I still don't understand what that was all about, but to me, that's destroying evidence and sounds unnecessary. I would let the professionals do their job.
Well, I just got a video today, and it was basically right when they were putting him into the vehicle. You can see that like one whole part of his shirt is like off. Like it looks like they like cut it with shears or something. And it almost looks like he's wearing like a white beater or a tank top or something. So they made modifications before he even got into the vehicle on his shirt.
Well, and there's no telling what happened once they got into the vehicle, but you just have to wonder, did that stuff even make it into evidence, or did they throw it away and then just say, oh, sorry?
I mean,
because that would contain potentially so much important evidence.
Now, if they thought it was a gunshot and, standard procedure for EMTs is to cut away the clothes, so that doesn't surprise me.
Sure, but you would want to hang on to it for the sake of evidence because of the residue that might be on the shirt.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's see. We have okay. Thanks for the super chat. What would cause the cavitation in his neck? Now, you kind of talked about that before, but did you want to kind of reiterate what you think happened with the cavitation that we see in some of the video?
Yeah, from my observation of it, it's more akin to a medium velocity impact of a blunt object instead of a high velocity impact of a rifle round. You can, if you look really closely, frame by frame, you see the neck actually bulge to the side, the same trajectory that the mic was traveling, and that's not how like a high impact cavitation would work. It would be in all directions, and it would be extremely violent and almost instant. And this was very delayed.
Yes, which we see in the Range Day Bro video, and we see in Dr. Martinson's video where he recreated the shots. you see that violent expansion every direction, just like
Yeah.
destroying that ballistic gel. So yes, very good point. Let's see. I'm trying to understand this. Additional shaped bank charges to counter the opposite directions. So could
Blank,
there have been more than one shape charge in it? I guess
a
is what it's
blank
asking.
charge maybe?
Yeah, I believe that there's a primary charge to create the standoff distance to basically get the space in between the microphone and his chest. So the main shape charge could create the jet for proper penetration. It needs a space for it to accelerate before it hits its target for it to properly penetrate. And, it's a more about the speed of the propellant than it is about anything else. And when it's like a car accelerating, it needs some space to accelerate. And so there's definitely there would have to be more than two explosives, but they would be so close together that, when you look at it, it would seem like one explosive, but there would be two different types at least.
All right, we have Gary. Thanks for the super chat. There was a video shown months ago that showed one member of TPUSA placing the microphone on Charlie's shirt. I don't know if it's still up somewhere, but it showed that person clearly. So basically, they're asking, do you think that that person that put the mic on his shirt is indicated in his assassination?
It's possible he didn't know at all. But that same person, if you watch their reaction right before the detonation goes off, they look down in a way like they didn't want to see it. Yeah, they looked down like that, and they were sitting there watching him the whole time. It was his audio guy.
No, is this
So
the
I
same
just I
guy?
just find it really
Yeah.
suspicious that the same guy that put the mic on Charlie looks away right before the detonation or theoretical detonation.
And just a little bit of background on that guy. That's the one that Barron brought up that he thought was suspicious. The one that Candace says isn't a typical because usually it's a student that handles that stuff and not this guy. And also, and I think he's the guy with the beard, right?
So I missed Candace saying that, but I do know that he has toured with them for quite some time. I have seen that guy Philip in many of the campus videos
So
doing
not new.
things before.
Okay.
Okay, but I have seen him shooting. But also I've seen him like tweaking, twerking around with different things too. So I don't know if he's just a utility player, jack of all trades. I'm not sure. But I just wanted to add that John and I, even though he can't hear me, we have seen this. We've had our eyes on Philip for a long time, hadn't publicly shared it, but this just, we wanted to really, as we were looking at individual people, we wanted to, kind of respect privacy till we, and not implicate people who are more private citizens, but we saw that look away and we spotted that a long, long time ago. And it just was very sus.
Yeah, and that's one thing too I want to point out is a lot of the stuff that you're hearing on all the channels, that information has been out for months on X. There's people who've talked about every possible angle you can think of, the weird hands, the explosions, the people that are implicated, the different hand signals, all that stuff has been on X for months. So a lot of people are coming out and almost acting like it's their original finding or something. I mean, it could be. Maybe they just saw it just now, but a lot of this information has been circulating. I just want to point that out. Okay, so Jordan Henshaw's asking, did you ever run the 3D multicam view function of that set that you did?
That is the next thing that I'm working on, is to take the angles and combine them to create a kind of a 3D model and use the same mapping, but have, where you can look at it from whatever angle you want, not from the fixed angles where the cameras were.
All right, and this is thanks for the super chat, MMC Millen, M McMillan. There we go. Now you know why they want that necklace. FBI can check it for explosives. Frank T took it. So not just the necklace, but the mic. The mic is making its rounds at TPUSA events and traveling around the United States. That seems very strange. But yeah, the necklace. I know Frank Turk was really trying to get him the police to not take it. Like he took it as evidence from the vehicle. So that's, I mean, if that's implicated, then that's very strange. Let's see. Okay, now people are asking again, I think kind of about this fake death theory. Any chance that this was supposed to be staged due to witness protection, but it went bad and he actually died?
I've actually entertained that maybe it wasn't a shaped charge. It was just a charge to make it look like, like a squib type of event where you're trying to mimic rifle impact to the neck, and somehow a piece of shrapnel hit his neck and killed him. But when I looked at his physical reaction, he has the signs of brain damage before the neck wound even really appears. So that kind of like struck that out for me.
And I think that kind of goes along with this, right? Did he analyze the
Yeah,
squib theory? Same thing.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, this is a good question. How did the blast avoid his chest but hit his neck?
I think it did hit his chest, and I think that the chest wound has been heavily suppressed because they can't explain two wounds with one rifle shot. It would unwind the whole conspiracy, right? The only way they could explain it is that the rifle hit the microphone and caused shrapnel to his chest, and I don't think that they were prepared to do that. They went with the narrative of a neck shot. So at all costs, any mention of the chest wound needed to be wrapped up, which I think explains all the strange happenings at the hospital, the weird, autopsy and flying them away and seizing the security cameras, like all that kind of aligns with that sort of narrative.
Okay, so this is just because there's a lot of people coming in. So if you had 30 seconds to convince the skeptical people, what would you tell them?
I would say explain the shirt, the necklace, and the magnetic clasp all preceding the neck wound. There's no way a 36 off, 30 off 6 impact to the neck is delayed to the point where, it can not be seen and cause all this movement on his chest. And then, almost wait a half a second later before it starts to bleed. We would have seen the cavitation instantly. We would have seen the bleeding instantly. And more importantly, it wouldn't have caused his shirt to move. There had to be a energy source that caused his shirt and his necklace to do what they did, and you can't explain that by rifle impact to the neck.
Interesting. Okay, so some people are asking kind of about your background, like what qualifies you to talk about this, I guess, is what some people are asking. And I just want to precede that by saying that, almost everyone who's bringing up these theories and stuff, many of them are not qualified in every aspect of every part of it because that's almost impossible. But he's very interested in it and decided to jump into it and start researching it. But I'll go ahead and let you talk for yourself, Jon.
Well, my background is in textiles. Like I mentioned before, I developed the refurbishment program for the Army. So I've cleaned over, 160, 200,000 bulletproof vests for the Army. We've conducted internal ballistic testing. I have patented technology to clean ballistic vests. I'm actually developing my own batteries now, my battery separators with bacteria cellulose. So a lot of the things are oddly in my wheelhouse. I'm not a ballistic expert, but I don't think that there was much ballistics involved in this event. So um, the coding is something that anyone can do now. It's not, there's no gatekeepers to coding anymore. It's more about, knowing which question to ask the genie than
Yeah, it's that
knowing
vibe
how
coding.
to rub the lamp, rub the lamp. So anyone can code if you just have the wherewithal to grind through it and keep asking the right questions and test it and work on it.
All right, now this question is very interesting. Who do you think pushed the button to detonate?
It's not really important, but my gut feeling is that it was acoustic triggered because of convenience, and timing was important. You wanted this device to be timed perfectly with the ruse rifle shot, and it's a microphone, so the technology is already there. Particularly this particular microphone, the Wireless Pro, has a very precise timing. It's
Yeah,
made
it has
to
time code built in, right?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, and it's down to the millisecond. So you could use the chipset that's already in it to get millisecond precision timing for that trigger.
Yes, very, very true. Let's see. Okay, yeah, this is an important distinction. So people are asking if you think the hole in his throat was like incidental or accidental.
Yeah, it was completely unforeseen. My test with that rectangular projectiles are unpredictable. So you just never know which direction it's going to go. They're wildly, inaccurate. So there's no way that they could ever foreseen that that would impact his neck, which made me, and in my mindset of if I was the assassin, I was planning this, I would never have planned for that to happen. I would have been planning to mimic a rifle shot to the chest. And if you think about the narrative of it, what's the most likely thing for an amateur person to be able to hit with a rifle, a cold bore shot under adrenaline
Torso.
pump, like the
Yeah.
chest, the torso, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is even if it was, like, say in the case that it was actually Tyler or someone else allegedly, right? If they were aiming for, no one aims for the neck. Long story short, right? So people
Yeah.
typically aim for the head or the chest. They try to aim for the heart. Most people just go for that torso area, like center mass is what they call it. So the fact that it hit the neck and on the left side of the neck, that's not like no snipers that I know would purposefully do that unless that's the only shot they had available, because the head is larger than the neck. You have less area.
Yes, but if you're specifically trying to send a message, especially because it is so close to the mouth, to me, it could be symbolic, in terms of trying to shut someone up. It is symbolic in terms of speech and freedom. And that's all that, Charlie was about. So I do think that there's a level of symbolism there. Also, I was just going to see, Matt, if you could ask Jon, what about Charlie's kind of brace and almost clenching, closing his eyes in that moment before the incident happened?
Yeah, so John, she's asking about how he kind of almost looked like he pre-prepared for the impact.
Yeah, it
Like
really
he
bothers
closed.
me. If you look at all the previous, like he closes his eyes for so long. It's just really weird. That's always when I go back and look at it, like pre-event, like it was almost like he anticipated it happening. I don't know if he was just taking a deep breath and that he was just tired of hearing that worn out question that he was hearing, or it's hard to say, but it is very strange that he kind of like pauses and closes his eyes like he was anticipating it about to happen.
Very interesting. I think we covered this. Do you think there was a bullet?
Yeah, I think that the bullet was shot probably into the fountains over the corridor, if my guess.
Now, have you seen the, well, so based on the audio that's been done, which you said the audio was messy there, just in general, all the reflections off of everything. Do you think that there's any way they could get an accurate depiction of the direction and the distance because of all of that?
I think the only thing that you could accurately say is the supersonic crack. Everything after that is going to be really, really noisy. But getting a accurate distance, from the Butler PA thing, like there's just so many rabbit holes chased through that. It's just audio is just a really tricky thing, especially for cell phone audio. It's not very predictable.
We kind of covered this. Do you think the cross could have stabbed him in the throat? You said no because it comes up and you can see it for a second next to his shirt, then drops back down. Now, could it be possible? Because if you look at some of the images of Erica actually holding it, it almost appears like one of the left or right arms of the cross looks damaged or different than the other one. Do you think it's possible part of that could have flown off into his neck?
I think it's possible. It definitely impacted his neck, but I don't think that it would have had the shape of the wound just doesn't match with the shape of the cross. It would have been a much more like a laceration than like a blunt impact.
All right, we have someone here. Jon, thank you for your research. I have too been a firm believer of the exploding something that ended CK's life. Question: if we agree that this is what happened, who makes such a device? Now, you kind of covered that. You said that maybe that Tennessee plant that exploded conveniently within 30 days of this happening might be someone. And then there are also nation states actually around the world, to be honest. Like, this is not exclusive to one nation state.
Yeah, and anybody with a 3D printer can get copper filament and print a shaped charge cone. So it's the hardest thing to get is the high density explosive, but it's not even that hard to get in the small amounts that you need. Anybody that's in the oil or gas industry, demolition, it's like, and like you said, any nation state, any number of them, you could manufacture something like this. It wasn't like a high piece of technology. Anybody could have done it.
And we are not insinuating anyone should go do that.
No.
All right, let's see. What about the micro bug drone theory? What are your thoughts on that?
There was definitely a lot of bugs around, but again, like why use exotic technology for something that's so public? It would just be risking like your secret.
All right, let's see. Now I think this is asking about cavitation. Why is the face and neck swollen before the neck wound appears?
That's a really good question, and that's part of why we see the physical reaction he has. It's the shock wave of the shape charge. It basically creates a hot like a kind of like cavitation of a rifle impact. You get a similar effect of that Mach 7+ impact of that jet hitting his chest. It makes a very small hole in the surface of the chest, but internally, all the fluids react to it and is basically would cause a wave to travel through his body, and you could see as his hair reacts to it, his ear lobes, his hands. That's part of the reason that ring fell off his finger. The shock wave travels through his whole body, and that's more indication that there was a higher energy kind of a force at play in the chest area than just that neck impact, because most of that precedes the appearance of the neck wound.
I'm not sure if this person is if they're fully understanding your theory, but so it was an accident. Why bother with the explosion? This makes no sense as an assassination.
Yeah, it's kind of opposite. If you flip that on the head, it was an assassination that was really well planned. It was precisely set up to replicate a certain thing, and a accidental impact kind of caused it to all unfold, and that's why we're left with this free fall of a narrative that makes no sense and nobody believes.
And then the next question here was: does John think the explosive was PETN?
Yeah, just because of the speed and the density, and if you wanted a clean burning explosive that wouldn't leave much evidence, like it would take someone particularly looking for it to be able to find it. It would take lab work. It wasn't if you had no indication that it was that explosive, you would never know to test for it. You would never find it.
All right, let's see. This is an interesting one. Do you think the gushing of the blood from the neck seen in the videos was real?
It at first, that's why I ran the analysis on it. It seemed so strange to me, the type of bleeding. It would almost look coagulated. But like I said, the fluid dynamic testing that I did revealed like that there was hard rectangular object that came out of it. When I found the second angle that saw it, it started to make more sense to me. We weren't seeing a high velocity bleeding. We were seeing a blunt impact, and basically the blunt impact was plugged by the projectile, and once it came unplugged, then that's why you have the kind of like the dam came loose and all the blood followed after it.
Do you think the color of it indicates a vein over an artery?
I think the color indicates that, and the lack of pulsation, that his heart was pretty much already stopped. That he was already like in the tail end of cardiac arrest, and I think there was a lot of physical damage already done before we see the blood come out of his body, and that's why it looks so strange.
Let's see. Gary, thanks for another super chat. Here's a video of the microphone being put on Charlie. He couldn't attach a link. Okay. Search Daily Mail. Charlie Kirk is seen at the event moments before the shooting. Okay. Yeah, we'll have to check that out. Someone said, we'll see electricity going behind his ear. That might be the necklace thing. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never heard of any electricity behind his ear, but there was lots of pictures that initially people thought was some kind of like audio, like, earpiece or something similar. And then later it was looked at and it looks more like it's his necklace flying up, and you do see his necklace fly up. So that might be what you're referring to. Let's see. If there was a blood squib used, why would they fake the shot and then electrocute him anyway? Now you're saying that you don't necessarily think it was a squib, or it might have been a squib gone wrong, correct?
Well, it would, a squib would replicate, the similar shirt movement. That would be the only way you could explain the shirt movement. You can't explain
and that would be from air. from like compressing?
A squib is usually air. It's just the most convenient, but you could do it with a low explosion and kind of like the opposite of a shape charge, where you would send, instead of sending a jet into the flesh, you would send a jet out of the shirt.
This is a good question. This might just be more of a conspiratorial thing, or maybe him thinking ahead type of thing. But and the reason why CK wore a white shirt that day, he usually wears dark colors like black.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do anything that I did with the mapping very well if it wasn't for that shirt. The shirt with the high contrast and those letters on it, it really gave me the perfect tool to map the movement of the shirt and kind of like really put numbers to it, down to like the feet per second that everything moves.
All right, and I see we have a lot more people in here now. This is covering the exploding mic theory. And of course, hit the like. Don't forget to subscribe and check out Kelly as well as Jon. And their information is down in the description. But basically, catching you up, he's done a lot of research on it. And if you go back in the stream, we get kind of into more of the details. But now he's actually answering a lot of questions, and some of them are very, very interesting. This one here is talking about that plant. It said, I'm behind, but the plant was a DoD contractor. Isn't Erica Kirk's mom also a DoD contractor? Could you request a prototype for quality control purposes?
Yeah, you should be able to get the whole contract. It wasn't like, a secret contract. So the contract went up for bidding. The bidding would have the complete production of what they required, the testing required. So you would be able to get the complete specs of the device. Not enough for you to replicate it, but a general idea of what they were making.
All right, and then someone says they saw an undergarment under the T-shirt. Did you see that in any of the stuff that you looked at?
It's when I was looking for the bulletproof vest, I almost saw like a rash guard, maybe like a sleeveless type of like nylon spandex type of rash guard thing, but I haven't been able to confirm it from them carrying them away. I didn't really see it, but it's hard to say. The jersey knit would have hit it pretty well.
All right, Mountain Star Studio, thanks for the super chat. They're saying thanks for your research, education, and always ask questions. Let's see, that's really up. Elizabeth Matheson, thanks for the super chat. Does this explain plastic fragments on the SUV floor? We did talk about that earlier, but did you want to do a recap of that really quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only is it the same type of plastic that you would expect from the device being flat black and also glossy black, but the way that the shards are broken in a uniform pattern, that's the high energy, kind of like a untempered glass shattering, right? You're going to get lots of little jagged fragments, and that would explain why it made its way all the way to the truck, because they're going to get caught in that jersey knit as they pull him into the truck and pull his shirt up to, try to attempt to save him. A lot of it's going to fall out and end up in the floorboard.
So now when you say jersey knit, you're talking about the T-shirt material.
Yeah, it's T-shirt.
Mm-hmm. All right, and that was interesting because that kind of makes you a lot closer to that theory, if that is true, that's the plastic from the microphone.
Yeah, I've been looking for fragments of the microphone every video angle. I look frame by frame, trying to find a piece of it, trying to find it on the ground and the grass. And that's another point. I think that's why they paved the grass. It's because there's no way they could get every little piece of that device up. And one piece of that device being found and tested for explosive residue would unwind the whole thing. And I think that's why the SUV got scrubbed and then put up for auction, because if they missed one piece of that and someone found it and tested it, or someone tested the seat that Charlie was drug across, but just one testing positive for explosive residue just opens up a whole can of worms.
Mm-hmm.
We had gone back I know it's unfortunate that he can't hear me, but we, back a long while ago, we just with microscopes, I feel like gone through what did this little thing look like right behind the table? Oh, well, looks like tea bags. Or, oh, I guess this is just the throat lozenges, throat coat, I guess, that he used to like. Or, the little trash. I mean, at one point we thought that we had found what looked like the mic pack may be exploding. So, just to, again, say the level of detail that Jon has put into this is extraordinary. And I've had at least a little sneak peek into being part of that for a long time.
So, John, basically, Kelly is praising you and said she's been working with you on this stuff for a while, and you guys have seen some interesting things together that kind of pointed this direction. And then also interestingly, I saw a picture where people were saying that maybe it was like the exploded mic before, and then someone else was like, "No, that's just tea bags because he drinks tea." Have you seen those images, John?
Yeah, when I first saw that, I saw a lower resolution of the is the platform that he was seated
Yeah.
on. And
Mhm.
because the tea bags have the little paper string thing to them, and the bags are kind of like the shape of the microphone. I thought it was the microphone at first, but then a higher resolution version came, and it was obviously it's gross that they leave the tea bags in the tea to steep like that. It had to be over steep tea, but the guy the table jumper, I called him, that jumped over the table just to like run past Charlie after he passed something over to the other guy. He kicked that cup over, so that's why there was just 2 tea bags sitting on the table.
Okay. Now, see this level of detail, most people have not covered at all. So I find it very interesting that we're just now hearing about all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, those are the
know
kinds of
every
things that we were.
frame. Like, I have obsessive compulsive a little bit, so it's like there's not a video that I haven't looked frame by frame to check for anything that I missed.
Yep. Tell him the throat coats, all of the little tiny yellow candies we have gone through, bit by bit.
Yeah, she's just talking about like the detail again, like the little yellow candies and stuff in the throat coat and all that stuff. This one's interesting. I don't know if this really applies to your theory, but just kind of they want your opinion about Erica's behavior.
I can't really speak on that. I don't know her personally. I don't know her from her past. I would say it's kind of strange to me, but people do strange things, especially when they're put in, weird positions. She's now the head of this big organization. She just lost her husband. Like, there's a lot of strange factors about it, but I wouldn't. I would go as far to say that I wouldn't call it normal behavior, but who would be acting normal under these circumstances?
All right. Now people are asking if they can see your photos. So for anyone, I'm gonna put it on the screen again here. This is his X. So it's Jon Bray on X, John Aaron Bray. So obviously make sure you go follow him, show him some love over there. But he posts on a lot of this stuff. So if you go through his timeline, you'll see lots of different examples of his images and the software that he modified and different things too. And I'm sure you can reach out to him on X, and he might might do a direct message with you or something if it makes sense.
I go hard on X. Anybody that wants to talk about anything, I'll argue with you too, or debate. It doesn't matter.
Now, do you ever do spaces?
No, I just
Okay.
usually through DMs.
Yeah.
It's better. Majority of this work is done from people correcting things I've gotten wrong. Yeah, none of this was gotten as far as it has if it wasn't for the open platform and dialogue that I've had on X. It's been valuable. Like, I appreciate it, even if someone thinks I'm crazy or calls me a retard. Like, if they have something input, like, I take it and try to make use of it.
Yeah, I've only been on X for a short period of time, and I can tell you it's probably one of the worst platforms I've ever been on. As far as they allow free speech, but then once you're on there for a couple months, then you're like, maybe we shouldn't, right? We should, right? Second Amendment, all that stuff, but or not Second
Yeah,
Amendment, but the freedom
You
of
have to
speech.
you
Yeah,
have
First
to grow
Amendment,
some
but
thick skin. You definitely do.
yeah. Well, it's not even so much that; it's just some of the stuff. Yeah, I said too much. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So, are you saying that the explosion is mimicking the shot to the chest?
Yes, it's my firm belief that the whole assassination was set up to mimic impact of a 30-06 to the chest as close as possible. That way, the evidence trail, I believe they even had a bullet to plant, on Charlie on the way to the hospital, but they had to scrap that whole idea because of the neck wound, because none of it made sense. I imagine they were just in a tailspin when they saw the neck wound. And if you look at their faces, there's a few of them, you can almost read it on them. Like, they weren't surprised when they saw Charlie start to move, but when they see that neck start to bleed, you can
Oh
see it on
yeah,
their face. They're just
I
like,
saw that.
it becomes obvious. I don't think the whole security team was aware of it, but there's definitely a few of them that it's just too odd, their reaction. And then their faces afterwards when they're sitting there over Charlie's body, it's like they're looking at each other like, what are we going to do? And then the one guy cuts his meta glasses on, like, well, let's get the main operators and up to task of what actually has happened. Like, what are we going to do, guys? Like, let's look at this live. What's the narrative going to be? So I can only imagine that it was sheer panic when they saw his neck erupt with that blood coming out, because it ruined everything. A single shot where they really banked everything on it. If it was an AR like Butler where they had multiple shots, like, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You could explain it. A shot hit his chest, a shot hit his neck, but that single shot of a 30-06 is just so tough to explain that neck wound with it.
Yeah, and I think Valhalla, I have to agree with some stuff you were saying in the stream last night, which was a great stream, by the way. If you guys don't follow Valhalla, go check him out. But he was talking about like just like the coordination. The more people you add, the less sense that it makes to do that, right? Because you have more people that can talk about it, more whistleblowers, more people that might give in or give it away. And I think I agree with you. I don't think that the entire team, if the security team was implicated, I don't think it was all of them that knew about it, right? I think it was just like maybe
it would be just the ones that absolutely had to know, and not only them.
All right, let's see. So now, what about no blood anywhere as they're carrying him? So there is blood for sure. There's blood on the platform. There's been some new stuff that's come out. I actually got into an argument with someone about this during a stream. There is blood. There's blood on him. There's blood on his security guys. There's blood on the platform. There's blood in the vehicle from the image that Candace showed. There's blood on the seatbelt. So there is blood. So I think we can let's use this stream as a public service announcement. There was blood. Okay. Now people will say, was it squib blood? Was it real blood? It doesn't matter. There's blood. So whatever one it is, there is definitely blood 100%. All right. Let's see. Why didn't they drive to the nearest hospital?
I think that's further, indications of a conspiracy, right? If you're gonna the number one rule of these type of things is that you have someone set up to do the examination. You just can't let anyone look at the body and handle it. Like, you have to have someone on the inside, or someone that's compromised, that's going to handle this, so you can force it whatever direction you want. So I think that's kind of more indications that there was something nefarious going on. The whole hospital event was just strange. It's nothing about it kind of makes sense. The leaks from the hospital, how they handled it afterwards, how they handled the vehicle, it's just all too strange to kind of explain just by coincidence.
And no 911 call from the security team has been confirmed, as far as I know.
Yeah, and then they pass right by EMTs. The EMTs are trying to hand them the gear. It's just like, why do you need 5 security guys in the SUV, or is an extra security guy going to help, or could like 2 of the guys get out and let the EMTs get in with their like professional gear? He had a man purse was their trauma kit. Like, the EMTs had a whole backpack full of stuff. Like, they could have obviously done a better job than the security guys. Why they all insisted on piling in that vehicle, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Harpo was. Sorry, Kelly, you're muted. Do you want to unmute real quick?
Yes, I have asked that same question, and just to reiterate that, Brian Harple has an extensive amount of training, not just when it comes to ballistics, but also when it comes to medical, and so does Rick Cutler, for that matter. In fact, leading trainings himself, both of them. So I just really, really struggle with the thought that they couldn't have done more, but also, why did they need so many people in that vehicle? It just, none of it makes sense. The story on the way to the hospital none of it makes sense.
All right, and just real quick, I know we have a lot more people in here now. We cover a lot of detail in this stream already, and we're just going through the Q&A now. But if you go back to the beginning, you can see his whole theory, everything that he believes, and the proof that he has that that's what happened. And then we're just kind of going over the QA and the super chats and stuff now. But we welcome you. And if you can, please hit that like button. It helps the algorithm. All right, let's see. And then if you look at the bottom, there's banners. And you can see Kelly's information. And I'll be putting John's up as well. All right, let's jump back to... Okay, yeah, this is interesting. So didn't the dump of blood look odd? Now, you kind of covered this, but... how would you explain that he hit, he reacted, right? And then you see a delay, like an obvious delay, which I think you actually said how long that delay was. And then you see the blood come out. How do you explain that?
If you look at forensic blood spatter, it would be described as a medium velocity impact, more akin to like a stabbing than a rifle shot. And there's nothing about that bleeding you would indicate that it was a high velocity impact. The delayed bleeding is, is even odd for a blunt impact. But when you take into account that it was, plugged by the actual projectile, when you can see the projectile falling out to the floor from two different angles, it starts to make more sense. The bleeding was, literally held back by the object that caused the wound in the first place.
Makes sense. All right. So someone's saying if that's the case with the timing, so you said something about the shot, maybe acoustically triggered the explosion or something similar. And we know, like in Hollywood, they can synchronize cameras and stuff very easily, right? So it's not like the technology exists to do it. But do you think that Hunter knew, since the question was aligned to that moment?
It's hard to say. He definitely was acting weird, but I mean, wouldn't you be nervous if you get to go and ask questions and and you're gonna, try to pin Charlie down on some hard questions. So it's easy to explain like his behavior. Him doing the his shocked thing before he does it's a little odd, and then his kind of connections are strange. So yeah, there's some coincidences there, but I couldn't like go any further than that with it.
Well, it's also coincidental that he just happened to be at Erica's town hall thing too, asking a question to her.
Yeah, just too odd, right?
I'm sure that was not on purpose. Let's see. Now let's just go over this poll here really quick. Do you think the exploding microelectrocution theory are plausible? So 77% of you say yes. That's a pretty high percentage. I'm going to add in one more poll here really quick. All right. Go ahead and do that poll if you get a chance. All right, let's see. We covered that. Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth Matheson, for your super chat. So they're basically asking, like, verifying. So you're saying that there was an actual shot from some kind of high caliber bullet that broke the sound barrier. And then also separately was the mic explosion. And then just to summarize the mic explosion itself, you don't think that the neck wound was planned, correct?
Exactly. The rifle shot was a ruse. The explosion was meant to replicate a rifle impact to the chest, and the neck wound was an unforeseen shrapnel impact.
We have a lot of people asking about faking his death. So I know that you don't think that he necessarily did. So I will.
I mean, like I said, he deserves the Emmy if he did. The guy's a great actor if he faked it.
Those are my kind of people in the house.
All right, this is a good question. Could the shirt mic deliver a capacitor voltage instead of an explosion?
It would be hard. You're looking at DC. You would have to have a huge battery. The microphone has a much higher capacity to cause like enough electricity to kill.
So now, on that same vein, I know that Baron said that he has an image that shows like a burn under his chest, under his nipple on that right side. Is there anything? And then he says, I think he said maybe there's like 3 spots or 3 prongs or something. Is there anything you know or could think of that could deliver enough charge to cause what we saw in that position if it was like a wearable device?
Yeah, like a taser, but that's less than lethal. It's I just don't know enough about like lethality of a handheld or portable device that's powered by DC power.
Okay, and then this is a good one too. Where was the flash if it was a shape charge?
That's a good question. That's the other unique thing about the explosives that they use is that it doesn't create a traditional flash like you would see. You would have to have a extremely high speed camera to even be able to see it. But there are a few video angles that I'm still suspect of that do show like a odd. It's not a flash, but it's like a gray area, like like kind of like a mirage where you have a shock wave where it kind of causes the light to bend in a different way. So there is some indication that there was a shock wave that was strong enough to cause disruption in the light, but those videos are not consistent. But you can explain that by shutter speed, right? Each camera has a unique shutter speed. They could have just been timed just right to be able to catch it. But I can only go by videos that are consistent between each other. And they're the only two videos that show it, and they're not exactly the same. They look different from one another. So it's hard for me to put a lot of like, credibility into.
Now, did you see the Jimmy Dore video that showed the mic explosion, and they were saying they could see like some smoke or some kind of vapor or
Yeah,
something?
that's what I'm talking about. That gray
Yeah.
area. That would be like if you watch high speed camera videos of shape charges, the pressure wave causes distortion in the light. And from a camera, it would just look like a gray area. It's kind of like the opposite of ray casting, where it spreads a light out. It would just cause the light to be diffused, so it would just make it look like a less lit area, and that's kind of like what you see. It just looks like a gray blob.
Let's see for this one, Matt. Let's see. Matt has he seen? Matt, has he seen the Jesse on Fire video of fake death audio? Maybe his audio research mixed with this theory makes it all work. Yeah, we had Elgeist. I've had Elgeist on my channel 3 different times before that Jesse on Fire video. I know they covered like a few things that were different, but overall, his audio analysis does not necessarily match up with his theory. In his theory, he basically says that the shot goes into the trunk, and then there's prosthetics and squibs and things that faked his death. So that wouldn't align necessarily with this theory. Do you have any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to be a participant in such an event. A missed shot, and then you're getting hit. Just when things get complicated, I tend to lean towards something that's more traditional.
All right, let's see. Yeah, what's your take on the frangible bullet?
I think that is an attempt to try to explain why they're not going to find a bullet. The cone on a shaped charge is made from copper, so it leaves tiny fragments of copper into the wound. So I think it's just an attempt for them to, prepare the narrative that they're not going to find a whole bullet. The bullet's not going to match the barrel, and also to try to explain the odd, circumstances of the neck wound.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. If you have a frangible round and it's shot through that gun, and then it hits, like say it hit his vertebrae and it disintegrated, and there's no official bullet, there would still be fragments in there, so they could still have that. And then whatever powder, because it's compressed powdered metal, so they would be able to find some of that in the barrel, I would assume, right? So they should be able to match it that way theoretically. But
right, and what makes me really suspect on it, it's the exact same residue you would find from a shape charge, outside of the explosive residue. But like I said before, if you weren't specifically looking for the explosive residue, you were just looking for copper, you would just find tiny copper fragments and or powder, a lot like the bullet.
interesting. Okay. Someone's asking if PET smokes.
No, it burns extremely clean. Doesn't leave. It leaves only crystal residue. So you have to be specifically looking for it. And like a GC or HPLC, it's going to take lab equipment to be able to find it.
When he says crystal residue, does that mean like it's super, super fine? Can you ask him that, Matt?
Yeah, so Kelly's asking, what do you mean by crystal residue? Is it super fine, or what makes it crystal residue?
It's basically the tiny amount that didn't get burned that is sent out like a propellant. It's going to be in the wound channel, and you would have to go and like take samples of the tissue and test it for that specific peak on a GC or like I said, sophisticated lab equipment. You're looking at parts per billion.
Well, okay. We have a super chat here from Dark. Thanks, Dark. If it was an accident, the FBI wouldn't need a narrative. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, but they have a patsy though. I mean, they want people wouldn't be satisfied with just the accident. And generally, these type of events, they're more than just you have a target, an opportunity, you have a reason, a motivation to target this person. But with that event, you also have the opportunity to create a narrative and you usually have motivations behind that. So the whole leftist thing, like, do we even know Tyler's a leftist? He didn't seem that political, but it's been framed as the left attacks Charlie Clark, and I think that's just a target, opportunity to create division.
Yeah, the I've been digging into the Tyler Robinson back history and kind of all of that. I'm gonna be doing a video on that probably sometime next week, but kind of just covering like, his parents, his friends. I know that Washington Post had something come out saying that his friends are now saying that, oh yeah, we could definitely see him do that, right? Like they're like really back in the story, and you like wonder like, are these real people? Like did they make the story up to kind of feed the narrative? You have to you have to ask those questions. But this is a really good question here. If the explosion was to mimic the effects of a gunshot, how are they planning to finish the kill? So in the case that
The shape charge would absolutely, yeah, it would have been as deadly as a 30-06 impact to the chest. It would have created a wound almost identical. He would have died just as instant as the rifle impact.
so your thoughts right now is that there's a chest wound and a neck wound. Neck wound was
Yes,
accidental or unplanned, and the chest wound has been covered up because it doesn't fit
yes, and
the narrative.
that's why all the strange events around the hospital and the parties involved. Anybody has basically seen that chest wound has probably had national security pressure put on them.
All right, and then we have this here. Curious about your software. So we know that you modified some software, and you can share the name of it again. But other than that, what else is it used for?
It was originally used just to for automation purposes, like self-driving cars. It's basically a way to take video and turn it into predictive modeling of motion.
All right, now this is a great question. If it was meant to look like a shot to the chest, how would they have made a hole in the shirt? So if the shape charge went off, he got a hole in his chest, and they said he got shot, but there's no hole in the shirt, that seems like it might be a flaw.
Right, but if you've ever it's odd for someone to know someone's been shot, but a hole in a shirt from someone who's been shot is extremely hard to find. They could have poked a hole on the way. Like I said, I think they had a bullet ready to plant. They could have poked a hole. It would have been very easy to create a hole in the shirt. You would have never been able to see it from the videos. There would have been no way that anyone would have been able to analyze and say that there was no hole beforehand. It would have been very difficult. I personally had a friend that was shot, and we didn't find out till he did his laundry that he had 6 holes in his shirt. He got shot in his leg, and he has 6 additional holes that went through his shirt that he didn't even know about.
Yeah, and I know a lot of times, even with entry wounds, doctors and coroners have hard times finding entry wounds sometimes. So
Yeah.
that can definitely happen. Let's see. So we have a super chat here. Thanks, M. McMillan. 30-6 fighter to minivan time with this charge perfectly for that scenario. It's discouraging to know all the guilty people involved. So what's the chance that this charge went off and killed him, and that 30-6 shot that you say might have happened? What's the chance that actually hit the trunk, and that's what Algeist is seeing? I think that's what they're asking, possibly.
Yeah, I think it's likely that the shot, especially considering look how many failed assassination attempts have had missed shots recently. Like, it had to be on the mind of anyone planning such an event. Like, do we go out and bank on another missed shot and have to have egg on our face and play cleanup again, or do we try a different way, something that's more foolproof? And I think that anybody thinking logically, like, that microphone would have just been too easy, and it's like a target of perfect opportunity, and all you need is just a good cover for it, and you're 100% going to hear the rifle. There's no way the rifle doesn't go off. Like, it's a guarantee that it will function as a ruse shot 100% of the time, but for it to impact and kill 100% of the time, you can't say that.
Very true. And same with electrocution, gunshot, explosions. There's no 100% guarantee that you're going to get that death. But, if they had something set up and someone else was part of it, they could have maybe, like some saying, like maybe they finished him off in the vehicle, right? Or so allegedly, right?
Yeah.
Let's see.
And we just had a super successful detonation of 1,500 devices with a similar technology. So it's the case study's already been done. It was very successful on a enemy that was very suspicious of it. So you have somebody that's completely unaware of it, it's much easier to perform.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that the setting those devices up, took like months and months of planning. Like some people were saying it was like, oh, they did it a couple days before. No, they were using these devices for a long period of time before they were detonated. And
It was
some
a decade.
detonated.
They had them
Yeah.
for a decade before they went off.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't know it was that long. And
Yeah.
then also some of them detonated across continents. Like they were like in Europe. Like a couple guys were in Europe too.
Yeah.
So
The walkie-talkies they detonated without them even being on. They're not even 100% sure how they did it.
interesting. I'm gonna have to dig more into that. So we have Eric, tight leather pants Kirk. I assume that's supposed to be Erica. Thanks for the super chat. Everyone hit the like button. And we have, this is kind of a montage of everything. Dark, thanks again for the super chat. Trunk fire, I'm not sure. I guess trunk firework plus prosthetic blood plus jolt equals genuine reaction. So I guess what are your thoughts on that? Basically, they're trying to figure out how he had that reaction.
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted to if they wouldn't trust Charlie's Emmy Award-winning acting, I guess electrocuting him before sending off a squib would be. But I would be hard pressed to volunteer for such a thing. Like, I think there'd be easier ways to fake his death.
Now, let me play devil's advocate. You've mentioned like his acting. Now we know Erica Kirk was an actress. So maybe she coached him at home. Maybe they did like sessions like
I would say she's not that good of an actress.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I don't know. I think she's come a long way in the last few weeks, and I would say she was actually pretty good a few years ago. So I think she's going to continue to surprise us with all her antics.
Let's see. I'm trying to read this next one before I put it up to make sure I understand it here. Maybe so. Penny CR, thanks for the super chat. Can you explain what he has strapped to his back? You can see it hanging over the chair inside of the chair shot just before he gets hit. I first thought it could be an air compressor for a latex wound. Have you seen that in your videos?
No, I'll have to go check that out. I'll have to look at that.
Because I know he has like a pillow he sits on, like a coccyx pillow.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the so Charles McClintock took a bunch of images, and they're some of the clearest ones we have. And in his images, people are saying, "Oh, he has something strapped around his chest," and they're trying to say he has something like under his armpit that's like strapped around him. It's not. It's actually Brian Harpole's medical bag, like clips and stuff on the side of it, I believe. Let's see.
Also, if it's worth noting too that in previous college tour stops, Charlie actually did have a back pillow too, and John and I'd showed John some of these previously as well. But he did have a pretty thick back pillow that he traveled with a lot, which he did not have that day at UVU.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't see that in that day
Nope,
anyway.
it was not there at UVU that day. Only the one that he was sitting on.
Let's see. Steve Cameron Productions. Does John know about the 2 large bottles that Charlie's feet were resting on when he was taken out? Would that help conduct an electric shock if you were to buy into that electric shock theory?
I don't think that it would have been that great of a. I mean, water by itself, especially drinking water, is not that great of a conductor.
And it's in a plastic bottle, which is an insulator. So,
You're right.
Yeah, I didn't put a lot of weight in that one. I kind of covered that in my last video. That even though they're there, unless they're leaking all over, and there's a shock, going directly through that, I don't know. It just seems very low probability on that one. Have you seen the white that wraps around his body from behind towards his ring hand? Have you seen that video? It's a long, thin white wire. I think this might be the necklace again. I know a lot of people talk about this white wire or like an audio, connector to his ear, or some people say it's like a squib tube or something. But I think it's just his necklace flying around again. All right. How do you explain no blood on the ground? This is, I think when people ask this question, like I covered this earlier, there's definitely blood. There's blood in the car. There's blood on the platform. There's blood on him. There's blood on his crew. But I think this is specifically asking for, they picked him up and they're carrying him to the vehicle. And there's a woman kind of like right behind them that's filming. Why is there? I think they're asking why there's no blood like dripping on the ground. I think is what this is asking. Let's see. Now, in one of Charles McClintock's pictures, there is blood dripping from Charlie. So you can actually see several drops of blood coming out. And Harpole said that he had a hard time stopping the bleed. So there was blood dripping. But like, why we're not seeing blood everywhere, I think a lot of it came out initially. I'm not sure how much was left after that. But a lot of people are saying he didn't bleed that much. Some are saying he bled a ton. I don't know what constitutes, low, medium, and high amounts of blood.
Trigger Smart and I go back and forth on this all the time. I feel that it was not very much blood at all. I just, based on the research I've done, the ER surgeons, the cardiologists that I've spoken to, they don't buy it. The nurses I've talked to. So yeah, we're just not going to see eye to eye on this one. The blood just does not look right to me.
So she's basically just saying that she knows I'm right. All right. So Sonny, thanks for the super chat. Has anyone compared the scene and injuries to people who were actually injured or killed in the Lebanon explosions? Also, which mic has anyone recreated the incident, I guess?
Yeah, the Lebanon explosions were pagers that were made to detonate to people's faces. I'm on 2% battery, so you're about to lose me. I appreciate the both of you having me on. It's been
All right.
great.
Yeah, and just real quick on that note, if he's running out of time, and we're hitting 2 hours too, so I will, with your battery dying, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think we've covered it well. The questions were good. Just if you have any other questions, feel free to ask me on X. I'm very open to dialogue on there. So,
all right, and you can see on the screen, subscribe and follow him, Jon Bray on X, Jon Aaron Bray, and of course, hit like on the way out of this stream. We appreciate everyone being here. And we will catch you on the next one.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jon.
Thank you so much, Jon. Thank you, everyone.